Hi guys, here we go with the third part of the Ice Palace. Where we left off yesterday, Ivan was just out in the snow at night without any boots and without any gloves because he chased what he thought was his brother. So let's find out how he gets out of this one. Ivan stopped. He was lost and knew that very soon he would fall into a sleep from which he would never awaken. He closed his eyes and was about to sink down on the snow when he heard a shrill scream. He jerked his head round and saw a white shape that flew soundlessly between the trees. As he watched, it settled on a branch and stared at him with great yellow eyes. "Go away, Snowy Owl," he whispered. "Go away and find a mouse to eat. I am no use to you. I am no use to anyone." The owl leapt from its perch with a scream, circled his head on velvet wings, and made off through the forest. After a moment it came back and flew round his head again. "Perhaps," thought Ivan, "it wants me to follow it." He was becoming very weary, but when the great white bird flew away again, he followed. In a few moments he saw the snowdrift in which he had made his shelter. He fell to his knees by the entrance and crawled inside with the last of his strength. The snowy owl circled the snowdrift once and was gone. When dawn came, Ivan wrapped himself up in his warm clothing and set out again. There was only a little bread left now in his pocket, and he knew he must save it, for he still had far to go. The wind was strong, and the snow was deep, and Ivan went very slowly with his head down. All at once he felt the snow shift, and he cried out. Beneath his feet a great crack opened up, and lumps of snow as big as houses fell into it with a hissing roar. He flung himself forward, trying to reach the other side. His mittens grabbed at the lip of the crack, but it crumbled, and he was falling. Desperately, he clutched at a tiny fir tree that grew outward from the side of the crack. It was so small that he knew it would never hold him. His weight would pull it out by the root, and he would fall down with the tumbling snow blocks to be buried forever in the bottom of the crack. But the little fir tree held. It jerked him to a stop and held him, and he dangled by one arm over the drop as an avalanche of snow hurtled, roaring into the chasm. Afterwards, he could never tell how long he hung there. He only knew that at last the avalanche stopped, and he scrambled his way somehow out of that ghastly crack. For a long time he lay in the snow, sobbing with fright at the horrible fate he had escaped. Then, wearily, he got to his feet and brushed the snow from his clothes with his mittened hands. His heart was heavy, and if it had not been for the crack that now blocked the way, he might have given up and returned to his distant home. As it was, he sighed, turned his face into the north wind, and went on. Presently it began to grow dark. "I must find another snowdrift," Ivan said to himself. He sighed. Long ago, when his father had taught him how to make a snow den, it had been fun. Now it just seemed like hard work. Snow dens are quite warm, he thought, but they are not like my little bed at home. The sky was a deep grey, turning black, when Ivan found his snowdrift. He fell to his knees and began to scrape out the tunnel with his mittened hands. After a moment he stopped. His head tilted to one side. From far away, carried on the wind, he thought he heard music. He listened. The pine trees creaked and sighed, and snow powder hissed over the frosty crust. Then he heard it again. It was the sound of a fiddle. Ivan screwed up his eyes and shook his head fiercely. No, it was not real. It could not be real. It was another cruel trick to hurt him, to keep him from doing what he must do. He began once more to scrape at the snow, whistling a little between his teeth to blot out the sound of the fiddle. But when he stopped, there it was, rising and falling in the wind. He got to his feet and gazed towards the sound. Biting his lip, there was a faint glow in the sky beyond the pines, and now he was sure there were voices too, mixed in with the fiddle. He looked down at his unfinished den, then out again towards the glow. It seemed real, all of it. The fiddle, the voices, and the glow. He saw a picture in his mind of people, happy people who laughed and shouted and danced to a fiddle, and suddenly he was overcome with loneliness. He left the snowdrift and began hurrying through the trees, his eyes fixed on that warm, hypnotic glow. He came out of the trees onto a long slope, and there below him lay a village. Lamplight glowed warmly in all its windows and spilled out of open doorways onto a crowded street. Everyone in the village seemed to be out of doors, and when Ivan looked down at the street he could see why. At the far end of it someone had built an enormous fire. Its flames rose high in the air, and the snow all around was pink with its glow. And the music! It wafted in great clouds up the slope, and Ivan had never heard such music. He was weary, but he wanted to dance. He was far from home, yet he felt like shouting, and up towards him their laughter, spangling the night, came children. A long ribbon of children, hand in hand, running up the hill. When they drew near, they stopped, and their leader smiled, holding out his hand to Ivan. "Come," he said, "tonight is a feast, and you are welcome here." And though it was winter, and though the night was a cold one, these children had on summer clothes, and all the girls wore flowers in their hair. In the village below, the fiddles began a fresh tune. The line of children stirred restlessly, like a string of spirited ponies. The boy beckoned, his smile inviting. "Come," he said once more. "My friends would dance." And stepping forward, Ivan slipped off a mitten and gave him his hand. At once they went whirling away across the slopes and down to where the people danced through pools of lamplight on the snow. Ivan, skipping, threw back his head and laughed. The line had reversed itself so that now the last child had become the first and was leading them on to the street. Once in the village, they did not keep to the street, but began threading themselves like a many-coloured serpent to and fro between the houses. Once their leader took them through the doorway of a house, and Ivan had a glimpse of tables, chairs, and a big tiled stove before he was whirled out again into the night. People were everywhere, but if anyone noticed the stranger in their midst, no one seemed to mind. The music grew louder, and coming round the corner of a house, Ivan saw that they were close to the great fire. In the flames an ox was roasting, and nearby, on upturned barrels, sat the fiddlers, their bows flashing back and forth across the strings of their fiddles, and they tapped their feet in time upon the beaten snow. The line of children circled, forming a ring with the fiddlers in the middle. Round and round they whirled, the firelight dancing in their eyes. Then the circle broke, and the child who had led them was thrust into the centre among the fiddlers. And the tune changed, and she danced a special dance for them while they went round and round. When her dance was finished, the girl rejoined the circle, the next child was pushed forward, and the tune changed again. Ivan watched through tears of joy. The cold was gone, and the loneliness. What would be the tune when his turn came, and what steps would he dance? And that's where we're going to leave it for today. Let's find out, is this a cruel trick? Or is it actually just a nice time for him to relax on his journey? We'll find out tomorrow.